Bible Briefs Series, number 6, The Herb-Bearing Seed. Reading from the King James Version of the Scriptures, Deuteronomy 12:32 states, "Whatsoever thing I command you, observe to do it. You shall not add thereto, nor diminish from it." If we read this same verse, Deuteronomy 12, verse 32, from the Septuagint translation of the Scriptures, which is a version of the Scriptures that was written over 1,000 years before the King James Version, it reads, "Every word that I command you this day, it shall you observe to do. You shall not add to it, nor diminish from it." So clearly, we understand that we are not to add to nor take away from the commands or the commandments given by the Most High God, Yah. This verse, Deuteronomy 12:32, is very important. To start with, it is law. We must adhere to this and remember to abide by it and not to lean upon our own understandings or traditions. This verse is called into action when we consider what is profitable and clean for us to eat. During this segment of Bible Briefs, let's focus on those foods that are considered plants and not animals. Genesis 1:29 states, "And Elohim said, Behold, I have given you every herb-bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat." Yah is very specific in his instructions. He commanded that we only eat herbs bearing seeds, and even when trees are described, we are told that the edibleness of a tree is determined by whether it produces seeds in its fruit. Yah commanded that a tree is only edible to mankind if that tree produces a fruit or nut, and that fruit or nut contains a seed which is able to further reproduce another like tree. This is the true plant life cycle. The biblical cleanness of a plant for man's consumption is based solely upon its ability to reproduce by seed. This notion of fruit-bearing and seed-bearing can be directly connected to Yah's continuous commands to mankind, animal kind, and marine life to be ever fruitful and multiplying and filling the earth. Genesis chapter 1, verses 26 through 29 shows this.
"And God saw that it was good. And God said, Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. And God blessed them. And God said unto them, Be fruitful, and multiply, and replenish the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. And God said, Behold, I have given you every herb-bearing seed which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in the which is the fruit of a tree-yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat."
Yah instructed that all life forms were to be fruitful, and this fruitfulness was to be maintained by means of seed. Genesis prophesied the future of the lineage of the seed of Adam and Eve and the seed of the adversary. Genesis chapter 3, verse 15. "And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and you shall bruise his heel." Yah established a covenant with not only Noah not to destroy the earth again by water, but the covenant was also with Noah's seed. Genesis 9, verse 8. "And Elohim spoke unto Noah and to his sons with him, saying, And behold, I establish my covenant with you and with your seed after you." Yah's focus on the seed is also evident when he established a covenant with Abraham, specifically regarding Abraham's seed or lineage. This covenant was made even before Abraham had a single child. Genesis 13, verse 16. And I will make thy seed as the dust of the earth, so that if a man can number the dust of the earth, then shall thy seed also be numbered. The scriptures show us the great importance of the fruitfulness by seed. The biblical cleanness of a plant for man's consumption is based solely upon its ability to reproduce by seed. Let's read again in the scripture Genesis 1 and 29 for further clarity from the Septuagint translation.
On the earth, and God said, Behold, I have given to you every seed-bearing herb, sowing seed which is upon all the earth, and every tree which has in itself the fruit of the seed that is sown. To you it shall be for food.
For example, a palm tree isn't built upon wood, but built upon overlapping leaves wrapping around the stem. But the lack of actual wood in the palm tree does not affect its cleanness. A palm tree produces a fruit with a seed, which makes it both edible and scripturally clean for man's consumption. In the book of Enoch, chapter 5, verse 1, it also discusses this.
Chapter 5. Observe ye how the trees cover themselves with green leaves and bear fruit. Wherefore give ye heed and know with regard to all his works, and recognize how he that liveth for ever hath made them so.
What about plants that are parasites? Are they scripturally clean? The mistletoe plant is a parasitic plant that doesn't pull nutrients from the soil. The mistletoe has special types of roots that pull the nutrients from a host tree. However, the mistletoe plant produces seeds and is therefore scripturally clean to mankind. As a matter of fact, it is said that certain types of mistletoe have been used by Native Americans as a medicinal herb. What about plants that eat bugs? Are they scripturally clean? The diet of a Venus flytrap plant is very unusual. The Venus flytrap is a carnivorous plant that actually eats bugs that are unclean to man. Although that description is thoroughly unappealing, Venus flytrap is scripturally clean. It produces flowers that when they are pollinated, they create small, black, shiny seeds. Yah did not command that we question the eating habits of a plant to determine its cleanness. He commanded that all clean plants produce seed. The carnivorous Venus flytrap does indeed produce seeds, and it too has been used over time as an herbal medicine for the service of man. Psalms 104 and 14 speaks of this service of man.
He causeth the grass to grow for the cattle, and herb for the service of man, that he may bring forth food out of the earth, and wine that maketh glad the heart of man.
What about mushrooms? Do mushrooms have roots? Do they eat bugs? The answer is no, but once again, special roots or diet does not determine whether or not a plant is scripturally edible. Mushrooms of all types, I repeat, mushrooms of all types do not produce seeds. Therefore, mushrooms of all types are unclean and not scripturally fit for human consumption. Mushrooms produce through tiny microscopic spores. Mushrooms are not even considered to be plants. Mushrooms are fungi, often growing in dark, damp locations, feeding off of dead plant material, wood chips, or other. And as unappealing as where they grow and what they feed off of is, mushrooms are unclean simply because of the strict rule of cleanness that Yah gave us. Mushrooms do not have seeds, and therefore mushrooms are unclean. Genesis 1, verses 11 through 13 speaks of this.
And God said, Let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth. And it was so. And the earth brought forth grass, and herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the third day.
For this same reason, lack of seed, all ferns and mosses are also unclean. Neither ferns nor mosses produce seed, but reproduce via spores. Horsetail is sold as a health product, but it is a type of fern. Therefore, it, along with all other ferns and mosses, are scripturally unclean and unfit for human consumption. Let's look at plants found in the oceans. The most common type of ocean vegetation is seaweed. There are many types, and they have no true roots. They have what's called holdfasts, which are just sticky plant-like bottoms that stick to the rocks or to the sea floor. These holdfasts do not gather nutrients. The seaweeds absorb nutrients from the water surrounding them. Many seaweed varieties even have air bladders to help them float. But as stated before, their lack of roots nor their air bladders do not make them unclean. We must examine if they produce seed. Seaweeds do not produce seeds. Seaweeds reproduce, like mushrooms, via tiny microscopic spores. Seaweed of all types are unclean and scripturally unfit for human consumption. All types of seaweed. Seaweeds are not even plants. Seaweeds are algae. And since they are not even plants, they also fall unclean according to Leviticus 11 and verse 19, as unnamed living things that are in and move in the waters, that do not possess fins and scales.
To you, these shall ye eat of all that are in the waters, whatsoever hath fins and scales in the waters, in the seas, and in the rivers, them shall ye eat. And all that have not fins and scales in the seas, and in the rivers, of all that move in the waters, and of any living thing which is in the waters, they shall be an abomination unto you.
This information is startling, but upon closer study of Yah's word, we continue to gain better understanding of his laws. All seaweeds, better known as algae, are unclean. This includes the popular variety of algae that have been promoted to us as health benefiting. These popular varieties of algae include kelp, spirulina, chlorella, sea moss, Irish sea moss, bladderwrack, and many more. Genesis chapter 1 and verse 29 states,
And God said, Behold, I have given you every herb-bearing seed which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in the which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat.
And Romans chapter 3 and verse 4 states,
If some did not believe, shall their unbelief make the faith of God without effect? God forbid. Yea, let God be true, but every man a liar, as it is written, that thou mightest be justified in thy sayings, and mightest overcome when thou art judged.
There are actual plants, however, that actually live in the waters and the oceans and are also not algae. One example of a scripturally clean water plant is the tape seagrass plant. This seagrass produces seed as commanded by Yah to be edible. The tape seagrass produces large seeds, which taste like water chestnuts when cooked. Zechariah chapter 8 verses 12 states,
For the seed shall be prosperous, the vine shall give her fruit, and the ground shall give her increase, and the heavens shall give their dew. And I will cause the remnant of this people to possess all these things.
The mangrove tree, which lives in the waters, is also scripturally clean for human consumption. The mangrove tree produces fruit with seeds. The mangrove apple is a popular snack with a bitter taste. The book of Jubilees, chapter 2, and verse 7 and 8 states,
And on that day he created for them all the seas according to their separate gathering places, and all the rivers and the gatherings of the waters in the mountains and on all the earth, and all the lakes, and all the dew of the earth, and the seed which is sown, and all sprouting things, and fruit-bearing trees, and trees of the wood, and the garden of Eden, in Eden and all. These 4 great works God created on the 3rd day.
As we now see, there are not only unclean meats to be aware of, there are also unclean substances that are not part of the animal stock, neither are they plants. These unclean and unfit for biblical human consumption, according to Yah's law, are algae, also known as seaweed, fungi, also known as mushrooms, ferns, and mosses. Yah has blessed us and provided us with His law for our benefit in everything. His law is perfect. Psalms chapter 19, verses 7. The law of Yah is perfect, converting the soul. The testimony of Yah is sure, making the wise simple. Deuteronomy 32, verse 4. He is the rock. His work is perfect, for all His ways are judgment. The Elohim of truth and without iniquity, just and right is He. 2 Samuel chapter 22 and verse 31. For Elohim, His way is perfect. The word of Yahweh is tried. He is a buckler to all them that trust in Him. 2 Samuel chapter 22 verse 33. Elohim is my strength and power. He maketh my way perfect. And 1 Kings chapter 8 verse 61. Let your heart therefore be perfect with Yahweh our Elohim, to walk in His statutes and to keep His commandments. 1 Kings chapter 8 verse 61. Let your heart therefore be perfect with Yahweh our Elohim, to walk in His statutes and to keep His commandments, as at this day.